Hi, hello, it's Matt, and welcome to my channel. I have this idea for a video, and I thought I would share it, and now I'm thinking, why didn't I bring my books over here? So I'm gonna go grab my books real fast and then come back. I'm back. I wanted to share how I read the Sarah J Maas universe and how I would recommend reading them now that I've read them all so far. We're gonna start off strong with ACOTAR. Those were the books that I read first. A Court of Thorns and Roses is the first book of the series, and then you get A Court of Mist and Fury. This is my favorite book out of the entire series. I know it's a lot of people's favorites, but it's a favorite for a reason. It's just that good. Next is A Court of Thorns and Ruin. This is a really good one. This is another favorite of a lot of people's. It's either this or Mist and Fury, and then one other book that's coming up. This is not the fourth book, it's more like a 3.5 book. It's just a novella. That's why it's so short. It's not really like its own book. I mean, technically it is its own book, but it's not necessarily like the fourth book of the series. It's a 3.5 book of the series, if that makes sense. And this book really just helps you get ready with the changes of Sarah J Maas writing, and it changes from first person to third person, so it helps you kind of understand like the changes of her writing and also like a little bit of perspective, I guess, for what's coming next. And this is a lot of people's favorite. It is actually one of my least favorite books out of her whole universe. So, A Court of Silver Flames. The only reason why I don't like this book as much as all the other books is because of the plot. Is just really dumb. I went on to her Crescent City series and I read House of Earth and Blood and then House of Sky and Breath. I really loved this one. It's really good. I will say that it is a lot of info dumping at the very beginning. Once you get past that, it is super good. It's like a murder mystery and I'm obsessed with it. I love thrillers and murder mysteries, so whenever it came into a fantasy type world, it was even extra better for me. Then came this book. I'm really glad that I read this after ACOTAR because I will say that it's connected in a way. After that, I decided that I wouldn't read any more Sarah J Maas books. I'm just kidding. But I did start this 8-book series. It's completed, by the way. It is the Throne of Glass series. There's a lot of people who complain about the reading order of the series. I personally read The Assassin's Blade first. I was told by 2 people that I knew in real life that, oh my god, I regret not reading it first. I wish I read it first, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, okay, well, if they regret not reading it first, I'm gonna make sure I read it first. And I am so glad I did. I'm also that person who doesn't care what order you read the series. I mean, yes, there is an actual order, but this book is a prequel to this one. Where this one leaves off, it picks up right on this one. But I will say that depending on how you read, if you are a slow reader or if you are a reader who doesn't read a full series complete before reading other books, I would probably wait to read this like the 3rd or 4th book. However, if you like knowing things in order like I do, this is a great one to read first. But it honestly doesn't matter as long as you read it before Queen of Shadows. Then you're good. Then I read this one. Sarah J Maas was 16 when she published these books. Well, this one in particular. As the series progresses, her writing gets better. I love it. I love the entire series. Before I forget, this is a mandatory read. Yes, it's about a character that isn't our main character. And if you try to skip this, I will be so mad at you. Please read it. Whether you do it with a tandem read or not, that is up to you. But please read this book. It's so good and it has some important things that you need for the very last book. So please read it, okay? It is not skippable. Read the book. On to the next book that I read after all of these. This one, House of Flame and Shadow. I hated this book. Not even gonna lie, I hated this book. A lot of people loved it, or a lot of people hate it. I'm one of the many people who hated this book. I will say a lot of it has to do with her writing. Sarah J Maas, I felt like, rushed through this very thick book. I don't know how she did it, but she did. She would go on to details about things that weren't all that important, like Bryce's pink shoes. She also changed Bryce's whole personality, in my opinion, where she was very caring and very like lovey-dovey with her person in the first 2 books. And then this one, she's like, get over it about his trauma, and I could not forgive her for that. Sarah J Maas also went through a lot of POV changes throughout it, which she does in Throne of Glass, which, you know, fine, perfect, I love it. But it would be like in between, like within the paragraph. One minute I thought I was in Bryce's point of view, and then suddenly I'm in someone else's point of view, and I didn't even realize it had changed. Whereas in Throne of Glass, it's usually a different chapter would change, or you could see like it was separated from a different paragraph or something where the POVs would change. Whereas this one, it wasn't that at all. I also felt like she was a Throne of Glass character's wannabe. That is how I read her universes, and I enjoyed reading it that way. I actually so happy that I read it the way that I did. However, if I were to suggest a way for other people who are new to the Sarah J Maas universe, I would probably start with ACOTAR, only because it is super easy to get into. However, I will say that is more of a romance fantasy. The fantasy world is in the back burner. It's more romance forward, but it's super easy to get into. Then I would probably read Throne of Glass because, again, it's pretty easy to get into. However, it's more plot and character development forward as opposed to romance. Romance is kind of in the back burner. There are mentions of romance and there are scenes of romance, and it is YA, whereas ACOTAR is more of a new adult. Throne of Glass starts as YA. It doesn't get spicy till Empire of Storm. Empire of Storms is when it starts getting spicy, but then at that time in the series, our main character is now 19, where she's becoming more of an adult, but in the beginning of the series she's 16, so. And then I would read the Crescent City series last because it is harder to get into because of how new tech and how much info dumping there is in the first book of the series, so I would probably save that for last, only for that reason alone. But then again, that is just my preference. That's how I would read them if I were to reread them again. I have been told that the way of events, it should be read Throne of Glass, ACOTAR, then Crescent City, but then again, up to you really. I would just save Crescent City for last either way. I'm really happy with the way I read it. That is how I read it, and that is how I would recommend reading it, and how I've also been recommended reading it. If you enjoyed this video, please give a big thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. This was fun. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!